Hey, how's everybody doing? Just gonna go ahead and get us started. So if we could find our seats. I just want to start by simply saying I am so grateful that you are here. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Ryan Spencer. I'm the Executive Director of Comal Conservation. And tonight we've got a really wonderful program for you. Our focus is on Camp Bullis, and it's just a really near and dear project to my heart. So I'm super stoked that Daniel's here. And before we get started, I want to make a few announcements. First, I want to congratulate our 5 new board members who were recently elected to the board and will serve over the next 2 years. Mercy Boatwright, Neil Brown, Jeff Goebel, Nathan Todd, and Jenny Aker. I'm thankful that you're here, that you've decided to serve, and that you're a part of our board. I also want to ask all of the board members that are here, past and present, to stand up. I have one of the hardest working boards in the Hill Country. They're absolutely incredible, and these are the folks that make sure we get stuff done. So round of applause to our board members for volunteering their time. I also want to mention that Scott Morgan is here. He is videotaping this for all the folks that can't make it tonight. We've really done a great job of getting those videos on our YouTube channel, so I'm proud of that. And if you can't make it, you can always check out our YouTube channel or our social media and, catch the program. I also want to thank our queen of cookies, Leslie Day. There she is in the back. She never disappoints. Sometimes I call her up in the morning because I forgot, and she's like, I got you. I'm going to be there, and I'm going to bring the cookies. And so she's just amazing and wonderful. I also want to mention that we've got our a partner group with us, the Comal Water Advocates. They're here, and they've got their new bumper stickers in the back. They're magnet bumper stickers, so you don't have to put them on your car and worry about paint or anything. But you can grab those in the back. They're trying to spread the message of water conservation, which is more important now than ever. And so I'm just grateful they're here. We've also got our merch and all of our outreach stuff, and don't forget to sign in. So all of that stuff is good. It's not often that we talk about natural resource conservation and our military's fighting readiness in the same discussion. But I think their connection highlights the simple truth that the south corner of the Texas Triangle is growing at a faster rate than anyone has predicted. And this is placing an enormous strain on natural systems. So much so that the federal government, specifically the Department of Defense, is taking notice. In response, the Hill Country Alliance and its partners has helped spearhead the collaborative partnership to bolster the DoD's efforts to conserve the watershed around Joint Base San Antonio, Camp Bullis. Coordinating this partnership and its efforts, my close friend, Daniel Oppenheimer. Daniel grew up hunting, fishing, and chasing armadillos along the Frio River in South Texas. He is a Bachelor of Arts from Washington University in St. Louis and a Master's in Environmental Management from the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. At Hill Country Alliance, Daniel works with private landowners, agency and nonprofit partners, and communities to enhance riparian habitat and watershed health, to foster regional collaboration and stewardship across watersheds, and increase private land conservation across the Texas Hill Country. Prior to joining Hill Country Alliance, Daniel worked for the Tamarisk Coalition, coordinating the Dolores River Restoration Partnership in southwestern Colorado and eastern Utah. So he has a lot of experience in collaborative projects. And at the time, he was helping the Nueces River Authority implementing riparian restoration projects on, how do I say that river's name? Savinoff? Yeah. And the Nueces River. Yeah, got it. I found that river's name. Anyway, help me welcome Daniel Oppenheimer.
All right, good evening. Can y'all hear me? Microphone, check 1, check 2, we working? All right. Ryan, thank you for the introduction. Everybody, thanks for having me this evening. My name is Daniel Oppenheimer. I'm the Land Program Director at a nonprofit called the Hill Country Alliance. Anyone ever heard of Hill Country Alliance? Yay. Where I wear a second hat, which is the coordinator of the Camp Bullis Sentinel Landscape Partnership. My assumption this evening is that few of you have ever heard of the Sentinel Landscape Partnership. And so we're going to talk real high level about, well, what the heck is that thing? So we're going to start off real high level, and then we're going to bring it all the way down to the ground. So bear with me as we start way up high in the sky and we work our way down to the ground. It'll take a minute, but I promise we'll get there. So yeah, this project, we're looking at the intersection of military readiness, natural resources conservation, agricultural productivity, resilience to drought and flooding. It's a mouthful. And so if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, like, holy moly, that's a lot going on, your instincts are right. Yes, it's a lot going on. So where should we start? I think we should start at the beginning. Back in 2013, the U.S. Department of Defense got together with the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the U.S. Department of the Interior around a simple but important realization. Yes, sir.
Can you move that a little bit out? The mic's coming down.
Any better? Any? How's that? All right, thanks, Clay. So yeah, 2013, the U.S. Department of Defense, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the U.S. Department of the Interior got together around a simple but important observation that what happens outside of a military installation, which is to say off base, outside the fence line, in terms of land use, can impact what happens on base in terms of training and testing. And so based on that observation, they created this program called the Sentinel Landscape Partnership. And so it's a national program in scope. And this committee that's really run by those three departments recognizes and supports local and regional efforts to support military readiness by working off base, outside the fence line, to support compatible land uses, and we'll lean into what that means in a second, and resilience and other needs that can align with what landowners are trying to do, the needs of communities, and it's finding that really complex Venn diagram of where community and landowner and military needs all coalesce. And I assure you, they do coalesce. So this is not a regulatory effort. This is about finding financial and technical resources and bringing them home to a region around a military installation. So I'll talk to you about what kind of funds we have already secured and are working to secure to bring to our landscape. And this is a really competitive program. When we became a Sentinel Landscape in 2022, we were only one of 10 Sentinel Landscapes across the entire country. We had to submit something like a 40-page application to become a Sentinel Landscape. It was a lot of work. So you might wonder, well, why go through all that trouble? Well, there's a few reasons why it's worth working really hard to become a Sentinel Landscape. With this special recognition, we're given priority consideration when going after big, very competitive federal grants to do things like protect land, protect water, protect other resources. And then often when you're going after these really competitive grants, they say, well, we'll only give you $1 million or $2 million if you bring your own $1 million or $2 million to the table. We want to see our money matched. That can be really hard to do, to match that scale of funding. But through this national program, the Sentinel Landscape Program, we're given this rare ability to match some of our federal funds with other federal funds. And if you've never had to chase money before, you might say, what's the big deal? It's a really big deal to be able to use that type of match, because then it just helps you leverage and match and bring in a lot more resources. Each Sentinel Landscape is given numerous years of funding to hire a local partnership coordinator, which is to say the herder of cats. And so I'm the coordinator of the Camp Bullis Sentinel Landscape. And then through this program, we are given access to a remarkable network of smarty pants people who know a ton about financing and ecology and all sorts of really cool stuff. And so it's a really compelling opportunity. And again, we were lucky in 2022 to become the first Sentinel Landscape in Texas. So as I told y'all, we're starting really high up in the air, and I'm going to bring this slowly down to the ground. Anybody here ever been to Joint Base San Antonio, Camp Bullis? All right, got a few hands. I'm going to actually go back to the map. I know probably have a lot of map people in the crowd. So we've got New Braunfels. I'm not tall enough to point to it, but can y'all make it out in the back? Up here. And that gray box there, that is Camp Bullis. It's just shy of 28,000 acres, straddling both the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone and the Contributing Zone. And it was created in the early 1900s, because even in the early 1900s, we were seeing growth in San Antonio that made certain training and testing difficult to do at Fort Sam Houston. And so the Army purchased this land way out in the country to do all sorts of training and testing. And Joint Base San Antonio works with over 200 training partners on all sorts of military missions. But the one that really stands out at Camp Bullis and Fort Sam is that they are the home of the military medic. The amount of training that they do for all branches of the military to support medical training is really remarkable and distinct. But you can see here they do a lot of other training missions at Camp Bullis as well. And so that gives you a sense of, where and how Camp Bullis fits into military readiness and national defense. But there's also an economic aspect to their work as well. Joint Base San Antonio contributes $55 billion, that's billion with a B, dollars to our state economy every year, and over 240,000 regional jobs, direct and indirect jobs, to the Hill Country. So whether you care about the environment, whether you care about the military, or you care about the economy, there's a lot of equities, a lot of values that are coming into play here. And so when y'all talk about conservation, Ryan mentioned, we often don't connect the dots in the Hill Country between the military and conservation. But all y'all here, I suspect, are very well versed in natural resource issues, especially in Comal County. And so what we often don't think is if and how those impact the military. And so light pollution. Often when we hear about light pollution, we hear about it in terms of, it impacts migrating birds. Well, it impacts basically every form of life. And beyond that, it can affect our public safety, our quality of life, and it can impede nighttime training at Camp Bullis. In fact, there's been so much development emanating from San Antonio that they could no longer do nighttime training on the southern extent of Camp Bullis. It's all now in the northern reaches. And so light pollution is a major stressor that can impede nighttime training at Camp Bullis. Flash flooding. We all know here we live in Flash Flood Alley. Guess who else is susceptible to flash floods besides our urban and rural communities? Camp Bullis. I think the late, 1998 flood impeded some training for weeks at a time. 2 people have been killed on base in the past 20 or so years. It can knock down fencing, damage other infrastructure, and so the military is susceptible to those destructive flash floods, just like the rest of us. When we talk about water, we've got some great folks here promoting water conservation. We think about our big cities like San Antonio, our smaller communities like Spring Branch, and we've got our rural counterparts as well. Joint Base San Antonio relies on groundwater as well for drinking and other uses. And so I mentioned sort of this idea of a Venn diagram, You're all starting to see how we can look at natural resources, not just in a way that supports our rural and our urban counterparts, but gosh, the military relies on these natural resources as well. And it's kind of hard to see here, but can y'all see sort of the bluish hue? This is the Edwards Aquifer recharge. So again, we've got Camp Bullis literally straddling that recharge and the contributing zone. I'm going to pause. Any questions, either high level? Yes, ma'am.
Yes. You were saying that there are only 10 Sentinel places within the country.
Yes, sir.
Who applied for that status for Camp Bullis? It's not the DOD, it's you guys, but who?
Awesome question. I will get to that in like 2 minutes. Okay. I probably would have forgotten, so thank you for asking the question. Hey, here we go. Less than 2 minutes, 2 seconds. So, back in 2020, I would say few of us in the Hill Country had ever heard of the Sentinel Landscape Partnership. And so who went after this thing? The Alamo Area Council of Governments, ACOG, in the spring of 2020, reached out to the Hill Country Alliance and Texas A&M's Natural Resources Institute and said, hey, do y'all know anything about this Sentinel Landscape program? I said, for HCA, I have no idea what you're talking about, but let's chat. And so we started to learn more about it. Texas A&M was already familiar. And it was really an opportunity to bring in more funding and technical resources to do the stuff that we all care about, but in a way that also supports the military. And so we said, wow, that sounds pretty neat. And so yeah, it was originally ACOG, again, the Alamo Area Council of Governments, who had this audacious vision to bring this national recognition to the Hill Country. And so, yes, ma'am?
Was DOD, I see federal partners including DOD, was DOD not saying to these groups, hey, you guys, we need you to do this because we're depending on this being done?
So, I'm going to take your question as, what was DOD's interest in this? To become a Sentinel Landscape, you have to have the buy-in of a military installation. If the installation doesn't want to play ball, there's no reason to waste your time trying to become a Sentinel Landscape. So yes.
There's no option. Do I have an option to apply or not?
So the installation does not apply for this status. It would typically be each Sentinel Landscape is different. Sometimes it's a council of government, sometimes it's a university, sometimes it's a nonprofit, but it's not the military, competing for this status. It's a partner organization. And so the Alamo Area Council of Governments, they've been working with Joint Base San Antonio on all sorts of projects for many years, like compatible land use planning. And so they had that existing relationship and the institutional knowledge to try to pursue something like this. And so,
Well, they were already on the ground
yes,
when this program started.
yes.
So it was, my place was Sue at ACOG knew about this. And who placed it?
It was the former head of Military and Veteran Affairs who since moved on from ACOG.
But they had a long-working relationship. So when the program started,
They learned about it at a conference and brought this wild idea back to San Antonio, and we talked about it in April 2020, and that was also the beginning of COVID, and a lot going on then, but we said, yeah, let's explore this. And so we started building a coalition, ACOG, Texas A&M, and Hill Country Alliance, and I think we had about 16 or 19 partners, and we submitted a pre-application. And these three departments, Defense, Agriculture, and Interior, said, looks pretty good, submit a full application. And so we submitted a full application, and in February of 2022, that's when we became Sentinel Landscape. And to go back to your question from a moment ago, it was a little before then that ACOG came to Hill Country Alliance and said, we are really proud of what we did, and are excited about where this is going. And given that this is really about things like night skies and groundwater and land use, we would love it if y'all took the baton. And I talked to my boss and I said, what do you think, Catherine? And she said, sounds neat. What do you think? I said, yeah, let's do it. And so here I am 3 years later talking to y'all about the Camp Bullis Sentinel Landscape.
So you guys remain the driver of this Sentinel Landscape, not the DOT.
Correct. The Hill Country Alliance is the coordinator of the partnership. And again, all of our work is off base, outside the fence line. We aren't going to Joint Base San Antonio and saying, you know what you need to do? No, this is about how we can do work off base, outside the fence lines in a way that aligns with the landowners' interests or community's needs, and also looking at that Venn diagram supports the military. And your questions are awesome because I did forget something. You are just reminded me left and right. Let's go back. So compatible land uses, that's kind of a technical or esoteric term. What do y'all think of when you're thinking about the military? And I said, things that happen outside of the installation can impact what happens on base. What might be some land use activities that would not interfere with what's going on at Camp Bullis? Any ideas?
Deer hunt? No.
Yeah, deer hunting. So ranching. Yeah. So let's lean into ranching. A cow is not going to create light pollution that impedes nighttime training. A cow is not going to create a vertical obstruction that impedes the use of a combat assault landing strip. A cow is not going to complain about the noise from an artillery range, and a cow is not going to create a tremendous amount of impervious cover that exacerbates flash flooding. So yeah, there are some forms of land use like, yes, wildlife habitat, agriculture, parks and open spaces that are compatible with military training at Camp Bullis. And so those are the types of activities we want to support and invest in, those compatible land uses that are good for conservation and also help the military. And we talked about resilience, how it's not just our urban and rural counterparts, that the military is also susceptible to drought, flash flooding, and wildfires. And so thank you for your questions. You've now helped me remember two things I would have otherwise forgotten. Yes, sir, question, and then over here.
You talked about outside the fence. What about inside the fence? Are they doing conservation?
Yes, that's a whole other presentation, but yes, they do a tremendous amount of work on base, from controlling feral hogs to controlling fire ants to monitoring caves and karst features, and the list goes on and on and on. And because they're part of the federal government, they also have, every federal law in the books that they have to follow. So yes, the short answer is they're doing a lot. Question?
Yeah, I had this question on your map that you had the purple border that went followed around. You talked a little bit about how they would determine what the significance of it is and what, since that's the boundary of the partnership and the light stick, and what things or what groups or organizations could get access to the money or project.
Y'all are finding every single thing I'm forgetting to talk about. Beautiful. Thank you. So back in 2020, when we learned about this Sentinel Landscape program, we started to bring all these partners together to talk about what could this mean for the hill country, what does it look like, and one of the big questions was, what's going to be our geographic scope? And that's a tough question when you're trying to look at military readiness, compatible land uses, resilience. That's just a lot of factors to consider. And so we did a big spatial analysis looking at everything from flight training routes to groundwater, other regional conservation plans, habitat. We looked at a tremendous number of factors, and ultimately we got sort of the general area of where we wanted to work. And then the reason those are squiggly lines is because we ultimately decided to go with hydrologic units. And so these are smaller watersheds within the sub watersheds within the Medina watershed, the Guadalupe watershed, and the San Antonio watershed. So that's the squiggly lines, and it's just shy of 1 million acres. Again, it was looking at ecological, hydrological, military equities that helped us determine those squiggly lines. And so, again, we started building this partnership in 2020. We received our recognition in 2022, and people were excited. Because again, it's people who care about conservation, people who care about the military, people who care about the economy, agriculture. We were able to build this diverse partnership because of all those equities at play. And we now have nearly 60 partner organizations, local, state, federal, nonprofit, chambers of commerce, all working together. And we just completed our first implementation plan just a couple of months ago. And as part of that planning effort, we crystallized our vision. Because again, you have almost 60 autonomous organizations working together. You've got to be pretty clear about what the goalposts are. And so I'm going to read this out loud in part for folks in the back or folks on Zoom. We strive towards a healthy landscape that enhances military readiness at Joint Base San Antonio Camp Bullis while sustaining working lands, open spaces, and natural resources critical to the region's vitality and future. So those are the goalposts. That's the long-term vision of who we are and what these nearly 60 organizations are striving towards. But again, that's a pretty high level and ambitious vision, right? As vision statements should be. So I promised y'all at the beginning I was going to bring this down closer to the ground, and we're slowly getting there. So we've got this high level vision. We've got an implementation plan that says we're going to support those compatible land uses and work on resilience projects that not only help landowners, but also local communities, and in so doing help the military. That's a lot, yeah. And so to do that work, we rely on our technical committees. We have 6 technical committees that are all led by volunteering organizations who work on issues related to surface and groundwater resources, engaging private landowners, mapping all the equities that we're trying to factor into our decisions, working with local agencies, preserving those dark skies. Again, light pollution is a huge stressor for nighttime training, and looking at where and how we can protect and enhance habitat. Because again, habitat is a compatible land use. Questions? Yes, sir.
Does fire working in this anywhere?
Fire, was that the question?
Yeah.
Yes. Let's see, do I have a slide on? Nope, I don't. So when our partnership started talking about our priorities, we were talking about resilience, and we were talking about drought, flash floods, and wildfire. We had a discussion with Joint Base San Antonio, which are the stressors that y'all are most concerned about? What are we concerned about? And drought and flash flooding rose to the top. Droughts, again, Joint Base San Antonio relies on aquifers just like the rest of us for drinking water. Flash flooding because they've had fatalities, they've had infrastructure damage. So those 2 stressors rose to the top. Wildfire is secondary, but definitely a consideration. Because again, we're working off base. We're not, as a partnership, we're not looking at wildfires or fires that might be created on base. We're looking at what's happening off base. And so that's why wildfire, it's a part of the discussion, but we're first trying to wrap our arms around drought, flash flooding, and then we'll work our way to wildfire. Yes, sir.
What about prescribed burning?
Prescribed burning is something that we're going to look at. In fact, maybe we'll talk about that later. Great. Y'all are asking great questions. But yes, prescribed fire is a tool and it can achieve a lot of goals. Yes, part of the discussion. Aaron, maybe you can talk about that later. Yeah. All right, y'all, I'm going to keep plugging through. How are we doing on time, by the way? We're good. so I'm trying to keep this pretty high level, and I want y'all to take the discussion wherever you want to go with your questions. We've officially been a Sentinel Landscape for just shy of 3 years, and we're still young as a partnership. 3 years, we're a big collaborative. We're still in Genesis. That being said, we've done a lot. You saw the slide with all the partners, that we've built a diverse and robust partnership of nearly 60 organizations who all individually have their own agendas and values, but can see where and how they fit into this partnership. And so we've got all these folks coming together towards a shared vision and set of goals. I have not gone into any of the specifics on purpose, but I told you how one of the benefits of being a Sentinel Landscape is you're given priority consideration for certain pots of money. So that's a big part of what we do as a partnership, is we chase money to support those compatible land uses and to enhance resilience, not only for the military, but for our surrounding communities as well. And so to date, including match, we have secured nearly $19 million for land conservation easements, for land stewardship, and Aaron's going to talk about that later, and I highlighted it because I didn't want to forget it, and science as well. We secured about $500,000 to start a groundwater study that's going to cover the whole Camp Bullis Sentinel Landscape, nearly 1 million acres, to understand how the upper, the middle, and the lower Trinity and the Edwards Aquifer communicate with one another. Where are we seeing recharge? Where are we seeing depletion? We need to fully understand each of these aquifers and how they interact with each other to inform where and how we try to protect and restore these systems. And so we've already secured that funding to get that study started with the USGS. We've also secured funding through Texas A&M to create a geospatial planning tool, which is basically a fancy way of saying an online map that considers a lot of different values and factors to inform where and how we do optimal conservation. So yeah, we're not just about bucks and acres, it's all about also informing our knowledge of this region to inform what we do and how we do it. And in terms of planning, took 17 months. If you've got 57 partner organizations and almost 200 individuals, collaboration can take a minute. And so 17 months, we finally finished our first ever implementation plan, which again creates the targets for what we are trying to do collectively over the next 5 years. I'm going to pause. I'm going to bring it down to the ground for real this time. Really, really down to the ground. But before I do that, any questions, high level, about this partnership, what we're trying to do, and how we're doing it? Yes, sir.
Are you duplicating efforts of other organizations?
Theoretically, it's possible, but the part of the reason that we are so expansive as a partnership and bring in so many organizations, the whole idea is to not be duplicative, to not reinvent the wheel, but to come to Comal Conservation and say, oh, you're already doing these these small gatherings with regional clusters of landowners. We're not going to step on your toes. However, you'll hear from Aaron in a second about this funding that Texas A&M secured. Hey, Ryan, can we, toss you all this really new funding opportunity? And then Comal Conservation, given its existing relationships and programs, can share that message. So a lot of the work is understanding who is at the table, what are they already doing, and where and how we can leverage each other's programs, knowledge, resources to achieve more together. So that's the goal. Are we perfect? No. I'm sure there is some inevitable duplication, but the real goal here is to bring everyone together, to leverage what we each uniquely bring. Did you have a question?
Yeah. So most of these Sentinel Landscape programs, large bases like Bullis, are there smaller ones? And are y'all interacting with the other bases like the Air Force Base?
So today there's now like 17 or 18 Sentinel Landscape across the entire country. They come in all shapes and sizes. Ours is unique in that it only includes one military installation. Some, like the Eastern North Carolina Sentinel Landscape, have 4 or 5 installations, and so they come in all different shapes and sizes. But again, we're working at just shy of 1 million acres, one installation, and then there is a lot of communication between Sentinel Landscapes. In other words, I just talked with the North Carolina coordinator on Monday, so there is a lot of communication between partnerships.
It's the only one in Texas.
We are the only Sentinel Landscape in the entire state of Texas.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Let's take this. Clay, we'll take a question from Clay. Should have recognized my partners. Maybe, I'm going to recognize my partners. So I showed you all this overwhelming slide of all these people. Holy moly, look at that. I should have used that as an opportunity to say we've got some great partners in the room. We've got Comal Conservation. We've got Texas A&M Natural Resources Institute. And we've got Green Spaces Alliance, South Texas. All partners. And Great Springs Project. Who else am I forgetting? So yeah, we've got a lot of great partners. And again, to your question, we're not trying to step on each other's toes or be duplicative. It's about leveraging what Marjeska is doing and Ryan and Aaron towards shared goals. Okay, Clay, question.
So size-wise, how big is the Camp Bullis Sentinel Landscape compared to some of the other ones?
So ours is just shy of 1 million acres. And I thought at one point that was one of the bigger ones. But there are others that are orders of magnitude bigger. I mean, Eastern North Carolina, it's literally like eastern half of the state. And so ours is actually one of the smaller ones in terms of the geography, but every partnership has its own complexities for sure. So we're smaller, but we're also trying to do large scale conservation in one of the fastest growing regions in the United States. Preaching to the choir, but still saying it anyways. So yeah, we're one of the smaller ones, but we got plenty of things to keep us busy. So I promised y'all I'd bring it to the ground. Now I'm really gonna fulfill that promise. So this is a concrete example of how we leverage our status as a Sentinel Landscape to chase after a big pot of money to support compatible land uses like ranching and farming, hunting on that wildlife habitat. And we did that by going to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Natural Resources Conservation Service, which has all sorts of funding through the Farm Bill, including one called the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. Now I'm going to use the acronym now. Since I've said the whole mouthful, I'm going to now call it RCPP. So RCPPs can come in all shapes and sizes. Texas A&M's Natural Resources Institute, on behalf of this whole partnership, went to the USDA and asked for $8.57 million on behalf of the partnership to support compatible land uses and to enhance our resilience to things like drought and wildfire and flash flooding. In the lion's share of that funding, $4 million is for land stewardship, taking this funding and giving it to private landowners within our Camp Bullis Sentinel Landscape for land stewardship. So my question to y'all, why land stewardship? How does private land stewardship, why and how would that connect with military readiness? What's the connection? Why are we going to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, going through a bunch of paperwork to support private land stewardship? What's the nexus? What's the connection between private land stewardship and military readiness?
avoiding the problem that you pointed out earlier, flooding, drought to the extent that you keep the aquifers alive. What's the,
Yeah.
people to avoid spawning to your using everything.
Yeah, so a lot of this is about soil health. How can we work with landowners in a way that supports their on-the-ground needs to do things like enhance soil health? And we know in the hill country, if you can enhance soil health, you're going to do things like enhance groundwater infiltration, which is another way of saying enhance our resilience to drought. Or if we know we're slowing and sinking water into the land, into our hillsides and riparian areas, that's enhancing our resilience to flash flooding. So yes, that's a big part of what we're trying to do, is to slow and sink water through land stewardship in a way that not only aligns with that landowner's goals, but helps communities and the military beyond that landowner's property. That's exactly right. And so, do you want to come up, or do you want to? I'm going to turn things over. Again, this is a partnership, y'all. I'm going to turn things over to Erin Davis with Texas A&M Natural Resources Institute. She's going to tell you a little bit more about this RCPP, what it is, and how you or perhaps your neighbors can apply for this funding.
Hello. Just so we can meet each other, I'm Erin Davis. I started with the Natural Resources Institute in September of just last year, so pretty recent change for me. Before that, I worked for the Texas A&M Forest Service as a forester in Kerrville, and I covered all the counties within this project area except Comal County. So I'm excited to be here to start making connections and getting to know y'all. But this RCPP, so I am working directly with this RCPP. I'm the project specialist. My boss is the project coordinator. He's located in College Station. I'm located in Comfort in Kendall County, so I'm part of this community and this Sentinel Landscape. And so we are rolling out the land management side, the stewardship stuff of this RCPP. And like Daniel mentioned, there's $4 million for this. And so there is a flyer back there. Did anyone pick it up? Awesome. Okay, yes, that one. And on the back, it mentions some of the land practices that will be part of or included in this program in that green box. So I was going to go over some of them. But it is open for application right now. The website is on there. It's a pretty quick application. So let's go quite in and out. And so water, of course, is a top priority. Water infiltration, soil health. These riparian areas are what we're going to focus on, as well as the agriculture productivity, so our ranchers, things like that. So the practices include riparian forest buffer and riparian herbaceous cover. And again, these are like NRCS's, Natural Resource Conservation Services practices, and we have hand-selected practices that we want to apply as part of this program. And so if you've heard of NRCS's EQIP program, Environmental Quality Incentive Program, has anyone heard of that? Okay. There's more practices and more things that you can apply for that. But with this one, we're being hyper-focused on these certain objectives. And so there's only going to be a certain amount of eligible practices. And so riparian is at the top for us. So riparian forest buffer, that just means establishing those areas where we are going to reduce disturbance, increase our tree canopy, shrubs, forbs, all those good things, and protect those areas. And then we also have tree shrub establishment, so kind of the same thing, but we can also do it outside of the riparian areas. Brush management, so with this, we're really going to focus on secondary brush management and not removing brush on slopes. Of course, we want our junipers and other species on hillsides. So this is more for like prairie restoration, secondary, smaller brush management. And then we have prescribed grazing and range planting, so again, helping those agriculture producers with that sort of thing. And then conservation cover, again, trying to restore native plant communities and increase their soil health. And then we also have upland wildlife habitat and early successional habitat development, which is basically just talking about bringing, again, those native plants that attract wildlife that we want to see on the land. As part of those practices, we have facilitating practices that help us get there. So one of those is fencing, whether that's fencing out your riparian area or doing cross fencing for prescribed graze and those kinds of things. We do not have prescribed burning as a eligible practice, and that's because we are down to less than 4 years of this program, and so we want to make sure we're able to fund the practices that people apply for. And with burning, we do have a difficult time scheduling those if the conditions aren't right. But a lot of these practices will get a property to the point of being able to burn. So the selective brush management, herbaceous weed treatment, all those things that can help get the land to a point where prescribed burning can't be applied. Okay, I think that's pretty much my spiel. One more thing before I forget, we're going to have a virtual workshop explaining all of these practices on January 29th. I printed out a flyer just so you can take a picture of it, but if you go to our website, it's at the top where you can register. It's a free virtual workshop during the lunch hour.
That website that's listed here.
That's our email on the flyer. It's the same, but it's .nri.tamu.edu. And that's our email.
Yes, you said there's 4 years left to this program.
For the RCPP specifically, the funding that we currently have. So hopefully it gets refunded and we can do it all over again.
Yeah.
But so then they worked on our contract for this RCPP and got me and my boss hired on this past summer. And now we have 4 years left.
And there's $4 million available for the remaining 4 years. Yes. Yeah.
How much of that $4 million is actually going to go to work, do these types of things, physically do this type of work as opposed to administration?
I believe, and I should have had this in the back of my head, but I think for NRCS's admin, they do take a small portion. I want to say it's like $100,000. So it is almost the full $4 million for land management. And so it's based on the practice, and NRCS establishes those costs that they're going to give back to the landowner on a per acre basis.
That can't pay for your salary and your boss's salary.
No, and so that is, the $4 million is just for land management. There's part of the RCPP that is funding us.
That's more.
Yeah, there was a
You said the original grant was $8.7 million. Is that right?
8.57.
8.5.
So yes,
So
yeah, it pays for salaries, it pays for land management, and then old news, and bring it back up. We also were able to support a handful of conservation agencies as well.
Yeah. Yes.
For some reason you're related to.
Are y'all identifying certain pieces of property and actually approaching the landowners? Are y'all depending on education such as this and hoping they'll come to you?
Yeah, we're depending on outreach and this network. I mean, the huge partner list. And so, like Daniel said, it's not regulatory. We want people to get excited and want to apply for it. And so, while we will get a lot of benefit really close around the base, or especially that north side, I mean, the whole project area would qualify for sure. Clay?
How small of an acreage size do you have to get to do these practices?
So for a single practice, you have to have at least an acre, like for that whole practice. So if you have an acre and only half of it, you could apply range planting, that wouldn't qualify.
So that'd be like a homeowner's sign this up. Yeah.
Right, yeah, you need at least 1 acre land unit for one of these practices.
Self-divisions that bump up to the area?
Like if they have a natural area?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that could apply.
Yes. Could an HOA apply and collectively be more than that 1 acre?
Good question. I am going to be learning all of this NRCS admin processing stuff. And so I know it's easier for a private landowner to apply just with all the administrative stuff and the forms and all of that. But I do believe Like if they have an LLC or something like that, they can't. Do you have experience with that, Chris?
Yeah, it's just a landowner is someone who owns land, and someone can be a corporation, and a corporation can be an HOA. I know HOAs are kind of a bit of a nightmare because you'll disappear an HOA on us, but like we can do conservation easements on HOAs, right? So you can do NRCS practices the same way. You have to set up the HOA as the landowner. And then this rigmarole of a bunch of paperwork, a bunch of USDA paperwork you have to do to register your farm and all that stuff.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that. Yes, thanks for.
So I'd be the actual landowner? Yep. So they will be assessing the property taxes for everybody in that HOA, be paying property taxes on the, I mean, you start to get into these parcels and
No, it's got to be owned by the HOAs. We're talking open spaces, your
common areas, stuff like that.
Stuff. We're not talking about your home properties, because then that's another landowner.
Right.
It's truly we're talking about deeded ownership.
What about if you got a large lot where you got lots of 10-acre lots?
These are great questions. Reach out to Erin offline. She's going to do a lot of homework around HOAs and subdivisions. Yeah, and so follow up with Erin. Her email address is right there. But thank you. These are really good questions, and we certainly don't know everything. Yes, sir.
Out of that 1 million acres, what percentage of it is Comal County?
Great question. I don't know, but it's most of Comal County.
Let's see it.
Behind a map. It's kind of hard to tell, but for the northern corner, the far eastern corner, and a tiny sliver that's effectively I-35, most of the county. So a lot of opportunity to bring these resources to Comal County. Erin, thank you. Tell me one more time, the flyer that folks can take a picture of is where?
On the most right tree will.
With Comal Conservation, the black?
It just needs to sit.
Okay, y'all, the table over there, Comal Conservation, has that beautiful flyer. Take a picture, post it on your social media, share it with all your neighbors, help us get the word out about this really neat funding to help support private land stewardship. Again, as we just talked about, in most of Comal County. All right, so Ryan asked me, or he told me that some of y'all might wonder, all right, the Sentinel Landscape, I kind of get it, but like, what does it actually mean? What are the possibilities? And so it's a much longer list, but I figured this would be close to 8 p.m. when I got to this slide, and we'd be kind of sleepy, myself included. And so I just made a short list. What are the possibilities? What could be done through this partnership? Well, Erin just gave a very compelling and concrete example. For private landowners, we can provide the technical and financial resources to help their on-the-ground land management needs through things like the RCPP. We can also help them with land conservation. As Clay said a moment ago, obviously land is expensive in the hill country. We can't and won't conserve it all. But yeah, we are working hard to bring in outside resources for interested landowners who want to conserve their land. We're doing what we can to connect them with those resources. The RCPP was just shy of $2 million that was secured for conservation easements. That money, we've identified the top 4 or 5 projects, interested landowners. We went through a whole analysis of proximity to the base, looking at aquifer reach, all sorts of ecological and hydrological considerations. So I think it's like 4 or 5 properties that have been identified, and now they get to go through the paperwork that Clay hinted at. So hopefully those will close, get to in the next year or so. And for local governments, I don't know if anyone here works for the county or Braunfels. but I know a lot of y'all are very civically engaged. So what does this Sentinel Landscape mean for local communities and local governments? Well, there's opportunities to leverage our status as a Sentinel Landscape to secure funding to create or expand parks. Again, parks and open spaces are a compatible land use that can mitigate encroachment and support that training mission. And so, the county just passed its parks and open spaces plan. I got the name a little wrong. We're here to have that discussion of where and how we can leverage the Sentinel Landscape to bring funding to support that local planning effort. I mentioned that we've now got funding to kick off a groundwater study. We've got this geospatial planning tool that we're developing. So we've got these really sophisticated scientific and technical resources that we're generating that can help local communities as they think about where and how to conserve their resources. And if we're increasing our resilience to things like drought and flash flooding and wildfire, we're not only enhancing resilience for the military installation, but for our surrounding defense communities as well. So Ryan, that to me is what is possible through the Sentinel Landscape program. And I think that's all I've got as far as my slides go. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for your really great questions. Y'all caught me on everything I forgot and then some. So thank you for paying attention, for these thoughtful questions. Any other questions or thoughts, reactions?
Everybody's feeling great. Let's give Daniel a round of applause. He's also incredibly capable, adaptable, and he's just a wonderful human being. That's why so many partners want to work with CBSL. And we got you a little gift, Daniel. We got you a swag bag full of Comal conservation goodies. We got you a hat and some stickers and a bandana. And I threw one of those cool magnetic bumper stickers for water conservation in there. So thank you. Appreciate you.
I just backed into a persimmon the other day, and so I'm going to put that sticker.
No, sounds good.
Like, Texas persimmon?
Yeah.
So a few announcements before we go. Our next community program is going to be right here in March, the 11th. We've got a special treat for you guys. Sarah Coles, the statewide director of the Texas Children in Nature Network, is going to be presenting. Sarah is going to highlight the disconnect that children currently have with nature, very profound. She's also going to outline how connecting kids with nature can have a positive impact on their health and well-being in the immediate. And she'll wrap up with a discussion that connects the dots between the Children in Nature movement and the sustainability of our conservation efforts. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to put that in the Conservation Insider. I want you to come out and check out that program as well. I also want to highlight real quick, we need you guys. Volunteers are critical to this effort. We are still very much a grassroots conservation nonprofit, and volunteers fuel our fire. Currently, we're looking for folks who want to help us with outreach. So you've seen our table back here. We've got a ton of incredible events where we're going to be going out in the community, spreading the good word about all these conservation programs. And so if you're interested in meeting your neighbors and sharing all of the good stuff that's going on, please reach out. You can send me an email, ryan@comalconservation.org. Also, if you're technologically savvy and you're interested in working on our website, we've got a really cool website, and we need your help trying to keep up with all the updating that's required for that thing. So let me know if you're interested in that. We will also take folks who want to learn how to work on websites. So even if you're not technologically savvy, we'll get you there. It'll be great. Lastly, I want to mention we do have an open staff position currently. Our administrative coordinator, Shayna, and her husband moved to Tahoe. So naturally, we're going to have to find ourselves a new administrative coordinator. The job posting is on our website at comalconservation.org. If you know cool folks that love the outdoors, want to protect nature, and want to work with a really cool nonprofit, please send them my way. Is there anything I've forgotten? Well, yes, sir.
I think thanks.
Yeah, of course, please.
I wanted to thank y'all know Tim, but about, what was that, 7 months ago, Greensmith Alliance, we requested some funding to help put the due diligence for the conservation easement that we're almost done with.
And so just really bottom of my heart, I love when we can get things across the line thanks to local groups, because it's real hard to get money. If Daniel's little talk can help you understand it enough. So super thankful for it all. So,
Well, thank you, Clay. We're grateful for you and grateful for everything Green Spaces Alliance does. For those of you who aren't aware, Comal Conservation operates a Comal Land Conservation Fund, and people give to that fund in support of landowners who are trying to put their property into conservation. And we've made 2 disbursements from that fund. One was to John Knox Ranch, which recently closed. So round of applause for John Knox Ranch. That's a 300-acre property, 200 acres of which are in Comal County. It's a faith camp, northern Comal County, and it's going to be endowed and protected forever. So that's really rad, and y'all helped make that happen. And then the second disbursement, of course, was to Green Spaces Alliance and efforts to support Tim Barker and his property over near Orlando Park. And so we're just really grateful for all of you who contribute to that fund, and just know that it's going to good work. So thank you all for being here, and I hope you all have a wonderful night. We'll see you in March.